before death had a face, before darkness had a name. There was creation, there was balance, and there were two beings who stood at the beginning of everything, Izanagi and Izanami. They were not rulers of an already existing world, they were the ones who made it together. They stood above the endless ocean, looking down at nothingness. No land, no life, no form, just chaos waiting to become something more, and they were given a task to create. With a divine spear, they stirred the waters below them, slowly, carefully, as if the world itself depended on every movement they made. Because it did, drops fell from the spear, and where they touched the ocean, land began to form, the first island, the beginning of everything. This was not destruction, this was not conflict, this was harmony. Izanagi and Izanami worked as one. They created islands, gods, life itself. Every step they took built something new, something stable, something real, and for a time, everything was perfect. There was trust, there was balance, there was connection, not just as creators, but as partners. But creation is not always gentle. Sometimes, to create something new, something must be lost. There came a moment when Izanami gave birth to something different, not land, not life, but fire, and fire does not create. It consumes. The birth of the fire god changed everything. The pain was too great, the damage too deep, and for the first time since the world began, something broke. Izanami did not recover. She did not return to the world she helped create. Instead, she went somewhere else, a place no one had gone before, a place that was not meant to be seen, the land of the dead, Yomi. And just like that, the balance was gone. The world still existed, the gods still remained, but something was missing, and for Izanagi, that was not something he could accept, because this was not just loss, this was separation, and some bonds are too strong to be broken that easily. So he made a choice that would change everything. He decided to go after her. There are places that were never meant to be entered, places where the rules of the living no longer apply, places where time feels different, heavier, slower, wrong. Izanagi stood at the edge of one of those places. The entrance to Yomi. It did not look like a world. There was no light welcoming him, no sound guiding him, no sign that anything living had ever existed there. Only silence, and a darkness that did not feel empty, but full of something unseen, something watching. But Izanagi did not turn back, because grief does not listen to fear. He stepped forward, and the moment he crossed that threshold, everything changed. The air felt different, thicker, harder to breathe. As if the world itself was resisting him. Each step felt heavier than the last, not because the ground was difficult, but because something about the place made movement feel wrong, like he did not belong there. Because he didn't. The deeper he went, the less the world made sense. Shapes formed in the darkness, then disappeared. Sounds echoed, without a source. Time seemed to stretch, bending around him. This was not a place for the living. This was a place where things ended, and stayed that way. But Izanagi kept moving, because somewhere in that endless darkness was Izanami, or at least what remained of her. At first, he saw nothing, only shadows, only silence, until a voice, faint, distant, but familiar. It stopped him instantly, because it was hers. Izanami. She spoke softly, as if from far away, telling him not to come closer, telling him that he should not have followed her, telling him that this place was not meant for him. There was something different in her voice, not anger, not fear, something else, something colder, something final. But Izanagi did not listen, because he had not come all this way to leave without her. He asked her to return. Come back with him. Leave this place behind. And for a moment, there was silence. As if the world itself was waiting for her answer. Then she spoke again. She told him something strange, that she could not leave immediately, that she had already eaten the food of this place, and because of that, she now belonged to it. But she would try, she would ask for permission, she would find a way. There was only one condition: he must not look at her, not until she returned, not until she was ready, because if he did, everything would change. It was a simple request, a clear rule, and for a moment, it seemed easy. Izanagi agreed. He stepped back and waited. In the darkness, alone. Time passed, slowly. The silence returned, heavy, unmoving, and with it, something else, doubt. Because the longer he waited, the harder it became to trust what he could not see. Was she really there? Was she coming back? Or had something already gone wrong? The darkness did not answer. It only grew deeper, and in that silence, his mind began to turn against him. One thought, one moment, one decision, that's all it takes. And standing there, in a place where nothing felt real anymore, Izanagi made a choice, a small one, a simple one, but one that could not be undone. He decided to look. There are moments when a single decision changes everything, not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. Izanagi knew the rule. He was told not to look, and for a time, he didn't, but silence has a way of growing. It stretches. It presses. It makes every second feel heavier than the last, and the longer he stood there, the more the doubt grew. What if she wasn't coming back? What if something had already gone wrong? What if he had come all this way for nothing? These thoughts did not come from logic. They came from fear, and fear does not wait. It pushes, slowly at first, then all at once. So Izanagi did something simple, something small. He created a light, a faint glow in the darkness, just enough to see, and then he looked. What he saw was not Izanami, not the one he remembered, not the one who stood beside him at the beginning of the world. What he saw was something else. Her body had changed, decay had taken hold, the form that once created life was now something consumed by death. This was no longer the world of the living, and she was no longer part of it. For a moment, everything stopped. Because this was not just fear, this was realization that some things, once lost, do not return the same way. But the worst part was not what he saw. It was what came after. Because she knew he had looked, she knew the rule had been broken, and in that moment, something inside her changed. The voice he had heard before was gone. What remained was anger, not quiet, not control, but something deeper, something that came from betrayal. Because this was not just about the rule. It was about trust. She had asked him for one thing, one condition, and he had broken it. In the place where nothing could be undone, she called out to him, not as she was before, but as something else, something that belonged to this world now. In the darkness around him began to move. Shapes formed, figures emerged, not alive, not human, but something in between. The guardians of this place, the ones who ensured that nothing left once it had arrived, and now they were coming for him. Izanagi did not wait. He ran, because some realizations do not leave room for hesitation. The path he had taken into Yomi was no longer the same. The darkness shifted, the ground felt unstable, the world itself seemed to resist his escape. Behind him, they followed, not fast, not rushing, but constant, unstoppable, because this was their world, and he did not belong in it. But the most terrifying part was not the chase. It was her voice, still calling, still following. And no longer asking him to stay, but promising something else, something far worse, that this was not over, that what he had done would not be forgotten, and that even if he escaped, he would not truly leave this place behind, because some actions do not end when you walk away, they follow you. And in that moment, Izanagi understood something. This was not just a mistake. This was a break, a point where something that once existed no longer could, and no matter what happened next, there was no going back. Some boundaries are not meant to be crossed, and once they are, they cannot be undone. Izanagi ran without looking back. The darkness behind him was no longer just a place. It was a force, a presence that moved, that followed, that refused to let go. The further he ran, the more the world around him began to shift. The silence of Yomi turned into something louder. Not sound, but pressure. Like the weight of everything in that world was closing in. He could feel it, closer, closer, and then light, faint at first, but real. The exit, the boundary between the living and the dead. With the last of his strength, Izanagi crossed it, and without hesitation, he sealed it. A massive stone placed between the two worlds. A final barrier. A decision that could not be reversed. For the first time since he entered, there was silence again. But this time, it was different, because on the other side, she was still there, Izanami, and now, there was no distance left between what they were and what they had become. She spoke, not softly, not with sorrow, but with something far deeper, anger, betrayal, finality. She told him that because of what he had done, because he had broken the rule, because he had seen what was never meant to be seen, she would take something from him every day. 1,000 lives, not as revenge, but as consequence. And in that moment, death was no longer an accident, it became part of the world, a cycle, a certainty. Izanagi stood on the other side, alive, free, but changed, because some escapes are not victories, they are endings. He answered her, not with anger, not with fear, but with something else, acceptance. If she would take 1,000 lives each day, he would create more life, more birth, more beginnings. And just like that, the balance was restored, but not the same balance as before. This one came with a cost, life and death, creation and loss, two forces, forever connected, but separated. This is not a story about monsters, or gods fighting for power. This is a story about something much more human, trust, a promise, a rule that was broken, and the moment everything changed. Because Izanagi did not betray an enemy, he betrayed someone who trusted him, and Izanami did not become something else without reason. She became what that betrayal created. This is what makes this story different, because the real horror is not what he saw in the darkness, it's what happened because he chose to look, and from that moment on, the world would never be the same again.